I've received your email from Ambassador Marcos Colon, and this is my response. I'd like to think that if John Bell Hood and William Tecumseh Sherman had access to PowerPoint in September of 1864, they would have made each other brief videos while walking through PowerPoints. Can you imagine Sherman's PowerPoint? Here's what I'm thinking. So you've asked about a deadline extension and a tailoring of the length of the paper. In terms of the deadline is flexible. I do not need your paper by the established deadline of this Friday, but I do need it by these dates. So, I mean, these are hard and fast because the registrar demands this. So if you're a senior, I would need that paper by the night of May 7th. I need to turn your grades in something like 24 hours later. So 11 p.m. on the 7th for seniors. If you're not a senior, you have an extra 6 days. I have to turn your grades in at the end of the following week. So those are hard and fast deadlines. I can't get around those, and so you can't either. Papers not in by then would have to become zeros. In terms of the length, the paper's currently set at 2,000 words, and you've requested a reduction from something from 1,000 to 1,200 words, if I recall the email. There's an issue with that. Let me talk about this, but I'm open to flexibility here. So in a 2,000-word analysis paper like this is an analysis paper. 2,000 words is already in my mind a little short, probably not in your mind. I guess not in your mind. Here's what the best papers would look like. The papers that would get A's would look like this. They'd have introductions and conclusions that took up something like 400 words of those 2,000 words. So the first page and a bit maybe, or the last page and a bit would be intros and conclusions, introducing the main topic and setting up the argument, and then spinning it at the end to think about why it's important. That would leave the middle of this paper. So 4 pages of this hypothetical paper would be analysis, specific, detailed, point-by-point analysis, you dealing with examples from Mark Grimsley. And those would be the best papers, right? The worst papers, less great papers, would have a lot more of that intro and conclusion, preamble, kind of generic description material, and less analysis. It's the analysis that matters in an analysis paper. If you think about an 1,100-word paper, so I put it right in the middle of that range that you've requested, that's what 1,100 words looks like. And what I can expect then, if I reduce the paper length to 1,100 words, I can expect many of you to write the same length intros and conclusions, and then you would wedge into the middle of that a little strip of analysis, right? And so I would end up probably with something like a 1 page or something like 300-word analysis. And so we've gone from a 2-to-1 analysis to exposition ratio up top down to a 1-to-2, right? The analysis portion of that paper is actually half of everything else. Exposition is when you're explaining things in the big picture. And because of the nature of this paper, right, where I ask you to address both Royster's and Rabel's claims, it would actually end up even worse in that you'd have 2 little strips of analysis in that paper, because you'd also be spending time introducing and explaining or summarizing Royster and Rabel. So I can imagine if I set the limit at 1,100 words, that I would get a good number of papers, right? Maybe 20 out of 25 papers that would have probably less than 250 words of analysis. And so it would absolutely escape the point of the paper. Here's what I'll do. I will say 2,000 words is the required length, but I will absolutely waive all word limit penalties. So what I would typically do would be to ding you points if you were 10% under or 10% over. So 200 words under or 200 words over the 2,000 word limit. I will not do that. But I will tell you that if you choose to write a shorter paper, if you choose to write a paper that's 1,100 words, for instance, you have to police yourself. You have to think about the absolute maximum for an introduction to be 10% of whatever your word count is. And word counts don't include your name, your title, works cited. You don't have to cite any works. Word count is the actual paper. I'll give you, say, 15% on the conclusion, because the conclusion should think about the significance of your argument, not just rehashing the intro. If you were writing a shorter paper, say 1,100-word paper, give me absolutely no exposition whatsoever on Royster and Rabel. Don't waste words explaining those claims. Get right into using them. And then you'd have to think about 75% of your paper being analysis. Analysis being in-depth, detailed, page-by-page analysis of Mark Grimsley's book. So in an 1,100-word paper, 825 words would have to be analysis. Now, I think that's hard to do. It's hard to pull off. And so in thinking about the requirements of the paper, you're actually making it a little harder on yourself, technically speaking, to write a shorter paper. Now, you could get away with this, say, with a 1,500-word paper. You might be able to pull it off. But your job becomes more difficult as you make the paper shorter, if you want to do what an analysis paper is meant to do. So an 800-word paper can be written, and it's clear, and it's beautiful, but it doesn't analyze things in a way that would produce a good grade. And so, yes, the word limit is there, 2,000 words. That is my requirement/suggestion. You will not get dinged automatically for a shorter paper, but I don't believe you'll be able to do the things in a shorter paper that you have to do to answer that question well and to analyze it. So let me know if you have any questions about that. I am happy to watch your response videos.